It sits in the back of your mind, doesn't it? A quiet, persistent frustration. You look at your life, at your bank account, and then you look at your capabilities, and there is a disconnect, a painful gap between your potential and your reality. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. You have the degree, you have the career, you understand complex systems that would baffle the average person. Yet financially, you feel stuck. You feel like you're spinning your wheels while others, people who frankly aren't as sharp as you, race ahead. We were sold a promise, you and I. From the time we were children, we were told that being smart was the golden ticket. If you get the grades, if you get the accolades, the world will reward you. Intelligence, we were told, is the ultimate currency. But the marketplace is not a classroom. It doesn't care about your GPA. It doesn't care how quickly you can solve a logic puzzle. The economy is a chaotic, emotional beast, and it rewards traits that smart people often lack: boldness, risk-taking, and the willingness to be wrong. Think about what intelligence actually is. It's processing power. It's the ability to simulate the future, to take data A and data B and predict result C. That is a superpower in engineering. It is a superpower in medicine. But in your financial life, that superpower often becomes a curse. Because when you can see the future, you see all the ways it can go wrong. You see the crash. You see the inflation. You see the job loss. You see the cliff edge that no one else notices. And so, you stop. The mechanism that is supposed to protect you ends up trapping you. This is the first great hurdle: overthinking. It is the friction that grinds your financial gears to a halt. You convince yourself that you just need more information. If you just read one more book on investing, if you just analyze one more chart, if you just listen to one more expert opinion, then, and only then, will you be ready to act. We call this due diligence. It feels responsible. It feels like work. But let's be honest with ourselves right now. It is not work. It is procrastination dressed up in a suit. It is fear intellectualized. Contrast this with someone who doesn't have your gift for analysis. They hear save 10% and they just do it. They don't worry about the optimal asset allocation. They don't stress about the Fed's next meeting. They just act. Ignorantly perhaps, but effectively. And here is the cruelest joke of all. Time. Time is the one variable you cannot outsmart. While you spent 5 years perfecting your strategy, that simple person has been in the market for 5 years. They have compound interest working for them. You have nothing but a perfect plan on a piece of paper. The cost of being smart is often the cost of delay. We pay a tax for our need for certainty. We demand a guarantee from a world that offers none. And in waiting for safety, we choose the most dangerous path of all: stagnation. But it's not just overthinking, is it? It's deeper. It's about how we handle our emotions. Smart people often believe they can logic their way out of feelings. You think you can outthink fear. You think you can out-reason greed. But when the market drops 20%, your IQ doesn't save you. Your amygdala, the lizard brain, doesn't check your SAT score before it hits the panic button. Fear is a biological response, not an intellectual one. In fact, smart people often make worse emotional mistakes. Because we are so good at arguing, we can rationalize any bad decision. We can invent a complex logical reason for why we sold at the bottom. We can talk ourselves into anything. This ties into identity. When you define yourself by your intelligence, being wrong isn't just a mistake, it's an existential threat. If I lose money, does that mean I'm stupid? If I'm not the smart one, who am I? So we avoid risks where we might look foolish. We stay in safe lanes. We keep our money in cash because the market is irrational. We critique the players from the sidelines because it's safer to be a smart critic than a bruised participant. But wealth is not built on the sidelines. It is built in the arena, amidst the noise and the confusion and the risk of looking like a fool. You have to be willing to be wrong to ever be right in a way that matters. We have talked about the trap of the mind, the overthinking, the paralysis, the identity. But there is another layer, a layer that is even more subtle and insidious. It's about the stories we tell ourselves about money itself. In the next part, we will explore why your very education might have blinded you to how money actually works. Why the smart path is often the slow lane to nowhere. Stay with me. We are just getting started. Welcome back. In the first part, we explored how your own mind, your greatest asset, can become your greatest liability through overthinking and fear. But that is only half the story. Now, we must go deeper. We must look at the choices you make when you finally do decide to act. Smart people have a unique weakness, the need for defensibility. When you make a financial decision, you aren't just looking for profit. You are subconsciously looking for an argument. You want a choice that you can defend in a debate. We prefer what I call prudent failure over risky success. If you lose money doing something that sounded smart, like investing in a complex hedge fund strategy, you can shrug and say, well, the logic was sound. You save face. But if you make money doing something that looks simple or dumb, like buying a boring index fund and doing nothing for a decade, you feel exposed. It feels too easy. It feels beneath you. So you choose the path of most resistance because it feels more intellectual. This leads us to the complexity bias. Highly intelligent people love complexity. You have spent your whole life solving hard problems. You have been trained to believe that value comes from difficulty. So when you approach money, you reject simple solutions. You build Rube Goldberg machines for your wealth. You create complex tax structures. You trade options. You look for arbitrage. You turn a simple goal, financial freedom, into a complex engineering project. But in finance, complexity is often a tax. It is a tax on your time, your sanity, and often your returns. Complexity breaks. Complexity has hidden fees. Complexity hides risks that even you, with all your processing power, cannot see until it is too late. The irony is that the most successful investors often seek radical simplicity. They know that a simple plan you can stick to is infinitely superior to a perfect, complex plan that you will abandon when things get tough. Simplicity is not stupidity, it is the ultimate sophistication. Then there is the optimization trap. You are an optimizer. You want the best rate, the lowest fee, the perfect timing. You spend months trying to squeeze that extra 0.5% of efficiency out of your portfolio. But while you are optimizing for the 1%, you are missing the 20% that comes from just being in the game. You are tripping over dollars to pick up pennies. Optimization is a form of procrastination. It feels productive, but often it is just stalling. Let's pivot to the biggest lie smart people tell themselves. I am a rational actor. You believe that because you understand logic, you act logically, but you are fighting millions of years of biology. Your dopamine receptors do not care about your degree. When the market is booming, your brain releases chemicals that make you feel invincible. You want to buy high because it feels good, it feels safe. Logic says sell, biology says buy. And when the market crashes, your cortisol spikes. Your fight or flight response kicks in. You feel physical pain. Logic says buy the dip. Biology screams run away. And in that moment of chemical warfare, biology almost always wins. This creates the knowing-doing gap. You know exactly what you should do. You can write a paper on it, but you cannot make your hand click the button. Being smart allows you to understand the theory, but it doesn't give you the emotional discipline to execute the practice. It is a humbling realization. To admit that your intellect is not the captain of the ship, but merely the navigator. The captain is your emotion. And if the captain panics, it doesn't matter how good the map is. So if logic fails us, and complexity traps us, and our own biology fights us, what is the solution? Is there a way to use your intelligence to build wealth without falling into these traps? Yes. But it requires a radical shift. It requires unlearning much of what you think makes you smart. In the final part, we will dismantle the ego and rebuild a strategy that actually works. Join me for the conclusion. We have spent the last 10 minutes dismantling the smart investor. We have seen how your intellect traps you in analysis paralysis and how your biology betrays you in the heat of the moment. So the question remains, how do we fix it? The solution is not a new algorithm. It is not a better spreadsheet. The solution is something much harder. It is what I call the ego death. It is the willingness to admit that you, yes, you, with the high IQ, cannot beat the market. This feels like defeat. To a smart person, accepting the average market return feels like settling for mediocrity. You think, I am smarter than average, so I should get better than average returns. But the market is not an IQ test. It is a complex adaptive system, and the math is brutal. Over a 20-year period, 90% of professional money managers, people with teams of PhDs and supercomputers, fail to beat the index. So, if the pros can't do it, what chance do you have? The smartest move is not to play their game. The smartest move is to choose the path that feels dumb, the path of radical simplicity. I call this the courage to be boring. Buying a diversified index fund and holding it for 30 years is incredibly boring. It offers no dopamine hit. It offers no cocktail party bragging rights. You cannot tell your friends at dinner about your killer trade. In fact, you will feel foolish. While your friends are talking about crypto or options or the next AI stock that went up 100%, you are sitting there with your boring 8% return. You will feel like you are missing out. But wealth is not built in the explosive moments. It is built in the quiet, boring years of compounding. It is the tortoise and the hare. The smart hare runs in circles, exhausting himself. The dumb tortoise just keeps walking. This brings us to the core concept, intellectual humility. True intelligence is not knowing everything. It is knowing what you do not know. It is recognizing the limits of your own foresight. Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing." In finance, this translates to, "I know that I cannot predict the future." Once you accept that, you stop trying to outsmart the market and you start trying to outlast it. You shift from a get-rich-quick mindset, which is driven by arrogance, to a get-rich-slow mindset, which is driven by humility. You realize that time is your only true edge, not your IQ, time. When you zoom out to 30 years, the daily noise fades away. The crashes, the headlines, the panic, they become just blips on a chart that goes up and to the right. But you have to survive the blips to see the chart. So let's redefine what it means to be smart with money. Being smart is not about complexity. It is not about prediction. It is not about beating the system. Being smart is about discipline. It is about emotional control. It is about setting up a system that protects you from your own worst instincts. It is about being humble enough to be simple and brave enough to be boring. If you can do that, if you can lay down your ego and pick up discipline, then your intelligence will finally work for you, instead of against you. You will stop struggling and you will start building. The struggle is not in the market. The struggle is in the mirror. Win that battle and the money will follow. If this series made you rethink your approach, consider subscribing. We explore these hidden patterns every week. Being smart isn't enough. We have to be wise. Thank you for watching.